Hey, everybody. Narrative on Jersey First TV. We're always here to educate you and also bring you closer to those individuals that serve us so well in New Jersey. This show is no different. I want everyone to meet Heather Darling. She serves as a Morris County Surrogate. Now, some of you listening are saying, yeah, I know what that is, but I would bet most of you are saying, I don't know what a surrogate is. What does she do? So this is the point of today's show. We want you to get to know Heather. We want you to get to know what the surrogate's office does, why it's so important. So we're going to lead people through that. Heather, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Elizabeth. Happy to see you this evening.
You are a wealth of information as always, and you serve a role that, frankly, until you need it, you don't really understand it or even pay attention to it.
Correct.
But you're actually a constitutional officer. You are elected into this position. You are an attorney. So we want people to understand what the surrogate's office does, not just so that they're more educated, but also because you've actually been making some incredible changes in the office that affect people. And when they need you, and your office, it will matter. So what I want to do first, Heather, is I want you to explain, and we're going to get into your background too, but I want you to explain to the audience, what is a surrogate, what is a county surrogate, and what is the point of this office?
Okay, so people are not familiar with it. A surrogate is somebody that handles guardianship, probate, and adoption. So adoption is simple. Everybody understands what that is. That's the unification of an individual with a family bonding together a forever family. Now, guardianship, you can have any adult, whether it's a child that becomes an adult that has some sort of disability, the parents make application or somebody makes application to be the guardian of that child who's now an adult. And with regard to an incapacitated adult, same thing. If someone has Alzheimer's, dementia, something like that, if they have had maybe a drug overdose, if they're extreme alcohol issues, they can also need a guardian appointed. Those people would come to our office seeking a guardianship by filing certain documents. And then probate is when somebody passes away. You come to our office with either the will and a death certificate, or you have no will, in which case it's handled as an administration, which is a slightly different procedure, but not that much. Now, if it's contested, it's a very different procedure, which would take us far too long tonight to get into. Right. But that's essentially what our office does. We handle those matters, and people really don't even know where to go when somebody dies, or when they don't even know that when their child, in many cases, becomes 18, that they need to get a guardianship, because what happens is an unscrupulous individual can exclude them from attending something like a medical appointment or otherwise that they really should be in for that child.
Well, let's walk through some of these examples, because some people may actually take some action as a result of this show and understanding it. So let's start there. Let's start with an example. I have an 18-year-old son. And now I am no longer in a situation of parent to minor. He is now considered an adult by the legal system. So what do I need to be concerned about, and how do I protect myself, my relationship with that child, and my ability? Let's say he goes off to college and something medical happens. I think a lot of times parents forget that they're no longer dealing with a minor. So explain what my options are there.
It's very true. So a guardianship is only for an incapacitated individual. So if that individual does not have any kind of developmental disability or anything else, then the parent cannot protect, other than to make sure that there's a will wherein a guardian would be appointed for a minor child. Always a minor when we're talking about guardian, or an incapacity in that sense under a will, or an incapacity when we're talking about an adult. So in that particular case, let's say you had a child who was 18, who became, now they're an adult, but they had special needs. They're still going away to college because they're able to do that. Right. But now you want to know what's this child's education plan? What's their meal plan? Are they following their meal plan? Are they taking their meds? Are they going to their doctor's visits? Things along those lines. You would seek a guardianship. And today, where guardianships used to be very restrictive, and they were designed to really give someone else the power over the ward's life completely. Now you have guardianship of the person and guardianship of the property, and they're separated. So if I can handle my own affairs when it comes to my person, but maybe not my finances, there can be a guardian appointed for my finances, but I can go about my day-to-day life unfettered. So the goal is to give the ward the greatest degree of self-direction possible. Everything is about empowering the ward now, which is very different than it used to be. So as a parent, how you protect your child is you would want to get that guardianship for whatever's necessary. This requires either the child's IEP and 1 medical doctor's evaluation or 2 medical doctor evaluations. And then you would make application to the court, testimony would be taken, and a determination would be made. And in not all cases is a guardianship necessary.
Yeah. Well, in this case, we're talking about obviously different levels of a child needing some form of a guardian. If you have a healthy child who doesn't have an IEP, who to date hasn't had issues, God forbid if that child becomes incapacitated by, let's say, an accident or something like this. This is a little bit outside the bounds, but I think it's worth discussing. At that point, that child is an adult. What does a parent do? And should a parent have done something prior to that situation?
So, in that event, this is from my time as an attorney. This is not as surrogate that I'm saying
Right.
this, but power of attorney. You would want power of attorney over your child. And it really is a good idea. I mean, you see things like meningitis, and now we learn from COVID that it's always a good idea to have a power of attorney over the affairs of an individual, including your spouse, your child, a parent, so that you can come along and make decisions in the event that they can't. And there's different kinds of powers of attorney. There's one that protects their autonomy, and it's called a springing power of attorney. It springs into effect at the time that it's needed, as opposed to a durable power of attorney, which is something that if I were to give, for example, you and your spouse, most spouses trust each other with a durable, ongoing power of attorney that exists until revocation. And you, of course, would have the same over a child if they were willing to give you that as a parent. And I'm sure in most cases that would be so.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, everybody, that was free right there. Free advice from an attorney, which we all love to get outside the bounds of the surrogate's office. But this is really the way you think, though, right? It's really all about somebody legally being having some sort of dominion or power to help out a situation. And normally, in this case, with an 18-year-old or above, an adult, it's someone who's incapacitated or, like you said, needs special help. So let's go to the wills now.
Okay.
So if I have an elderly parent who has not drawn up a will and that parent dies, it has to go to probate in that case. So that goes directly to your office?
Correct. But in both cases, whether they have a will or they don't have a will, it goes to probate. So if they have a will, and there are different kinds of will, there's self-proving will, which sails right through the office. And then you have others that are subject to question. You need to find a witness, and sometimes a witness is not available, depending on when the will was drafted and the age of the witnesses. When I was practicing, oftentimes my staff would be the witnesses for the people. Well, I'm no longer practicing. My staff went away to college, and now they're going to start lives of their own in a lot of cases. So how do you find them?
Wow.
So you want to do self-proving because that eliminates that need in the event that a person passes. And then you have, when there's no will, what's called an administration, and people stand in different stead when it comes to the ability to become the administrator. So it would be spouse, it would be parent over child. There's different lines, and everyone on an equal line has the same right. So the others then have to renounce and say that they do not want to be the administrator. Otherwise, there could potentially be a court battle for that. And of course, those are lengthy and costly, and it's kind of tough, especially oftentimes there's somebody that needs to be buried. And when you have somebody that needs to be buried and you're fighting over control and assets and everything else, we've seen people wait quite a while. to be
Wow.
insured. Yeah, it's
And in that scenario, you're playing referee almost. Your office is trying to get that to an end that's going to work.
We can counsel. We can counsel them in the sense, if you do it this way, this is what happens, and if you do it that way, that's what happens. When it comes down to mediation, my deputy tries to help the court by doing some mediation. But when it comes to loggerheads and nobody can come to a determination, then it has to go to the superior court judge that handles the probate matters. So then you're dealing with a lot of attorneys, you're dealing with a lot of legal fees. Sometimes it takes a while to get it done. It's a shame. And a lot of times you spend as much as the value of the estate fighting over the assets in the estate. And most often when we see a contest, it's the money. It's over the money. And it's really sad. That divides families forever.
Right. Right. So let's be clear. Everyone who dies in Morris County goes through your office in some way. That estate, whatever it is, in some form, will be handled by your office. As you say, if their affairs are all in order, and I want to talk about what that means, but it will sail through, as you said. When there are issues, this is where things take longer. So let's get into some more free advice. We love our lawyer free advice here tonight. Maybe I should have coined this show Free Advice from Attorney Heather Darling. But now listen, you've seen all these wills come through, or no wills or whatever. So everything goes through the surrogate's office when someone dies in Morris County or any other county and their surrogate. So you've seen it. So now obviously you're in a good position to say to someone, this is what you need to do so that your scenario sails through, as you say. So describe to us the best setup.
Okay, so the perfect setup from start to finish. And this is as a lawyer. This is not a surrogate that I'm telling you this, okay? Right. But it's with my surrogate experience included. So you want to have a trust. You want to have a Medicaid trust. You want to protect your assets. The saddest thing I ever saw as an attorney was somebody in their 90s come in, their spouse needed long-term care, and they were going to have to spend their assets down to literally the point of around $2,600. Mm-hmm. And that was all that this little old man was going to have to live off of for the rest of his life. $2,600 at any given point was the max. And that was where they had to get to before Medicaid would start paying. So up until that point, they had to spend their assets. They had to, put their home on the line, do the mortgage over to, or the deed over to the nursing facility, the assisted living facility. Wow. All because those are the rules. And, I'm not saying this for people to be able to skirt the rules and to have their family get free care. But what I am saying is that you're going to have one spouse that's left destitute when the first one goes into a medical facility. Currently, there's a 5-year look back on this. So you need to do it 5 years before the time that you would go into a facility. Many people put this off until the bitter end because they think it's a jinx or something like that. It's the smartest thing that you can do. The sooner you can comfortably do it, the sooner you should put everything into trust to protect it in that sense. And of course, there's always business reasons and everything else for trusts. We've seen that. But then when it comes to drafting your documents, understand that a trust does not go through my office, nor does an insurance policy and other designated beneficiary items. So what would happen is that your will would come through and the trust would pass outside the will through the trustee. The trustee would continue to manage the trust as they always had. And now you would have an executor that would take care of whatever amount you kept for yourself, which is presumably a reasonable amount for you to live off of. But that trust provided you with protection for the bulk of your assets in the event of the circumstance that I described, where, somebody does need to go into long-term care. Let's say there's a slip and fall on the property and it exceeds assets, or a car accident, something like that, where there's a significant settlement. It can often leave people with really nothing. And it's very, very difficult for everyone. So now you come to the office, you have your will. And if your will is what's called self-proving, which it has an affidavit saying that it's intended to be a self-proving will. It's signed. In my case, when I was an attorney, it would be signed by the testator,
Right.
2 witnesses, and then signed and notarized by myself, all at the same time,
Right.
in the same room, watching each other with the
Right.
questions of sound mind, 18, whether this is in fact your wishes. And once you've done that, there's a presumption of validity that's very hard to overcome, unless you can prove that somebody was not of sound mind or
Right.
under substantial duress at that time, which presumably, if you're in an attorney's office, I mean, if you're in there and your witnesses are really giving you a hard time, a good attorney is going to say, listen, is this really what you want? And they'll find a way to separate the people into 2 rooms and make it not happen that day if it needs
Right.
to not happen that day.
Right. Right.
So
That's the cleanest way is self-proving. Everything's been protected by trust. And you're really saying there's no reason to wait to do this. It's a 5-year look back means if you do it too close to a situation where someone needs care, then it's not valid, right? Within
right.
those 5 years.
You need to make it the 5 years.
Right.
Yes.
You need to make it 5 years.
Whether it's the death of the individual, if it's for tax purposes,
Sure.
Whether it's entry into a long-term care facility, if that's the event, whatever that event is, you have to have 5 years from the date that trust becomes valid until that event.
Wow. A lot of people don't know that. I'm sure you've seen some heartbreaking stories with that come through your office too. I'm certain when it comes to elderly individuals, that can be tough. We're going to come back to that in a bit because you've done some great things with probate, and I want you to be able to talk about these.
I want to talk about it.
Yes, we're going to do that. We're going to do that, but let's take the third part of this though first,
okay.
and then we'll come back to the changes you've made. I want to talk about adoption.
Okay.
Because that's also an area we don't really understand what role a surrogate plays in a particular adoption process.
So the surrogate's role in an adoption process is really administrative. You'll have the adoptive family will be submitting paperwork to the court. You'll have, if there's an agency, they'll be submitting paperwork. If it's a family that's adopting out or an individual, they'll be submitting paperwork. Then you have the individuals from the state who are evaluating this whole thing and making sure that it's a good fit. We'll be submitting paperwork, and all of this will be going to the judge. So right now we have one main person in my office who oversees all of that. She's really great at what she does. She's been doing it forever. People love her. When it comes to adoption in the state of New Jersey, you can actually venue shop. So if you live in Morris County, your stuff, right, your legal stuff happens in Morris County. But adoption is one of the few things that you can venue shop. So if you live in Ocean and you think that you want to use the Morris County Surrogate, you can do that. And that happens a lot because of how good she is, how thorough, and just how kind. And that's a huge part of the process because you've got a lot of tension. You have families in the case of a foster care adoption, a lot of times it gets right up to the end. And then that child goes back to the birth parent, and the family who wanted to adopt, who was the foster family that's been caring for this child and protecting this child during a very, very difficult time in this child's life when they're away from their parent for very serious reason, obviously. Now this adoptive family or would-be adoptive family that's fostering is terrified. What's going to happen to this kid? They're going to go back to somebody who was previously deemed unable to take care of their own child. So if you see me pushing a cat from side to side, forgive me. I'm trying to play hockey defense right now with my cat.
You can let them come into the frame. It personalizes you. It's all good. We've seen very funny things on the show. So adoption, that's emotional. That's a roller coaster. Lots of stories there as well. And that goes through your office. I'm sure some go through more easily than others.
Yes.
When someone we've heard the term a ward of the state. If someone is in a situation where they are they actually going through your office in that scenario? What does that mean? The state is now responsible for them. Is that you?
Well, you may have a guardian appointed. Well, it's processed through our office. It's not me. Right. As somebody who's overseeing that. Right. But we actually do a lot of oversight on the guardianships. So people have to check in, they have to file reports. We're responsible for making sure that those reports get to the state, to the judiciary, so that everything is filed properly, so that we make sure they can make sure money's not disappearing. But we compile everything and get it to the state, because we want to make sure that if that individual, let's say it's an individual that doesn't have family, that now has dementia,
Right.
and they have a state appointed guardian, and they're in some facility and they have a significant amount of money. Well, you want to make sure that money is not disappearing,
Right.
and that it's there for them to pay for their care, to pay for things that they need. And somebody's got to oversee that, because unfortunately, from time to time, if people aren't overseeing things, then things go wrong. So,
Yeah.
and that's something that we take very seriously. In fact, the state has been changing the way that that's handled of late, and they've been making it much stricter for guardians, because they want to make sure people are protected.
Well, that whole financial end of it, of course, is super important. Okay, so let's talk about what you've been able to do. You were elected, again, this is an elected position, and you are actually a constitutional officer, which is unique, right? Not all of our elected county positions are that.
Not all three.
Not all. And you were elected in what year?
I was elected in 19. I took office in January 1st, 2020.
And why is it a constitutional officer position?
So initially, the surrogate, the clerk, and the sheriff, as well as registrar, which we don't have in Morris County, but registrars were positions that did the work of the Crown here in the States. So we had those people in those offices had the authority to do the work of the Crown. And they were entitled constitutional officers. And it's a different class of individual than a freeholder, which is we're full-time and freeholders are part-time. All of us have different term lengths. Some have 5, some have 3. So it's a very interesting scenario where we do a lot of work together, but we wear very, very different hats.
Well, that is fascinating that that's left over from hundreds of years ago, right? The reason for that. So you've been in office, you've been able to make some big changes, really sort of revolutionize the way things are done. I want you to explain that to people, because, one of the things is when we go to vote, often we're voting for positions that, the public sometimes doesn't understand what they do. And I think it's important for people to know not only what you do, which we've done a good job explaining, but also what you've been able to achieve. Because ultimately, if I need to interact with your office, how great of an experience I have or not is really based on, if you've been able to take the office, in the right direction. So go ahead and tell us some of the things you've achieved as surrogate.
All right. So I took office, as I said, January 2020. And now we know what's looming, because now we're Monday morning quarterbacking this. The first thing that I wanted as a practicing attorney, oftentimes I would end up going to people's homes to help them do a will, because they had waited until the bitter end and they couldn't come to my office. They couldn't even get out of bed. Wow. And their spouses, in many cases, were older and infirm and also unable to come to the office without great difficulty. So I saw the need for an online probate platform, especially because of the way that we do business now. Everything is online. Even before COVID, people don't go and transact. They shop online. They do everything with convenience in mind. So that's something that I also wanted to bring. So the first thing that I wanted was an online probate platform. So I went running down to my third-party software provider and said, I want this. And they said, yeah, no, we can't sell that. Nobody wants it, and you're not getting that. And I thought that was going to be my 5-year fight. Right. But week number 1, we had put in place with Jen Voto, who had put this program together for the Morris County Bar, something called the Reduced Fee Attorney Referral Program. And what that did was it enabled people who do not qualify for pro bono attorney, but they also cannot afford full price legal services, to obtain an attorney through the bar if they meet certain qualifications, which they do through the bar. We pass them there, but it's something that was not available in our office because we have to allow the program for it to exist. So that was week number 1. I was really proud of getting that done. The
Nice.
next thing that we did, I have show and tell, was we brought back this lovely Citizen's Guide to Wills, Trust, and Estates,
Wow.
which was discontinued in 2018. It's an incredible resource, something that I would highly recommend that my clients pick up. When I was practicing, I used to keep them in my office. We updated them. We changed information to meet the new tax codes. And we started, for me, an overarching goal of going into this office was to let people know what the surrogate does.
Right.
And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do that tonight, and especially the Q&A, so people can understand. And so it's been an overarching goal to let people know. So we launched a massive program of reaching out to entities, to churches, you name it, and let them know we're available to speak. Nonpartisan, I reach out, to the Morris County Republican clubs. I reached out to the Democrat committee, anybody that wants us to come, whether it's a business, whatever. So we were doing, I did 3 one evening, the last night that I was able to do them before COVID hit and everything got locked down. So we were doing really well with that. And that was March 18th of 2020 when this happened. So just prior to that, the assignment judge called myself and my deputy over to his chambers and said, you guys need to come up with some kind of procedure just in case people aren't allowed in the building anymore. So by the time we got across the bridge from the courthouse back to the admin building and up the elevator, we knew what we were going to do. And what we were going to do was we were going to get my online probate platform in place that they had said no to.
Nice.
So that became the plan. In the meantime, we used the internet. We had a more primitive version. We had Form A and Form B. You download them from the internet, you fill them out, you send it back with your papers, or we had a Dropbox in the lobby, you put it there. But in the meantime, guess what? All the surrogates are closed. People can't get business done.
Right.
First, I'd like to say, to my staff's credit, we were there. We were there every day. We never closed for COVID. Whether it was picking up things from the mail, picking them up from a Dropbox, or literally running outside to your car like we were some sort of drive-in in the 60s or 50s.
Well, you were needed. You were needed more than ever, sadly.
And it's hard for me to fathom a surrogate's office closing down in a time when so many people did need to go and probate wills. And, if you had a mortgage to pay and the breadwinner is the one that passed away,
right?
They held all the funds.
Yeah.
What were you going to do? You needed to probate to pay that mortgage and everything else you had to do. And things were held in abeyance, but who wanted to go through that when their loved ones were sick or passing away or things like that? So now our third-party software provider saw the issue and they said yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we now got our online probate platform, which was huge. So October of 2020, we started a beta test with it. November of 2020, it came live. Proof positive that this thing was needed. 2021 was its first full year in existence. And in its first full year, we did over 3,000 probate cases in our office. A full third, over 1,000, went through our online probate platform the first year. So that shows the necessity, as well as the fact that once it came to fruition, other surrogates offices throughout the state of New Jersey also began purchasing it and bringing it into their offices. The next thing that we did was people want transparency from their government. They want to know what's going on. So we did the first ever surrogates annual report for Morris County. So this was our 2020, and our auditors just got done last week doing our audit for last year. So that will be available soon. It went to press, but we're waiting to publication, but we're waiting for it to come out. And last year, 2021, we actually, by leveraging technology with less staff, were able to handle more assets in probate, do more probates, and handle more assets than ever before. So it was $659,700 and change that we brought in to the county through our efforts that subsidize what the taxpayers have to pay, because that money goes to fund other programs in the county. Right. So we're actually giving back through our work. We also did the personal record, which this is something that you want to keep with your will, with your other papers. It's got computer passwords. It's got your
Oh
attorney's
my gosh,
name,
that's great.
your brokerage accounts, all that stuff. And you put it in here, you keep it with your papers, and you tell somebody where to find it at the right time, your executor, whoever it is. Even if you don't have a will, you can tell the person that would stand instead to be your administrator where it is. And that person can then find things, because when people die, oftentimes stuff ends up in unclaimed property because nobody ever knows what they actually had or where to get it.
Right. That's right. Or how to get access to the password. So that's a booklet that people can get from your office as well.
Not only can they get it from our office, but we actually have all three of those available in PDF form online.
Nice.
So you can go there and you can download it as well. And when the world closed and we were not able to go out and talk to people, we started doing Zoom educations from our office. So we have presentations there that we've done with qualified members of the bar. If you want to get really deep on those questions that Elizabeth was asking me previously, you can go and look at these 1 hour Q&A. There was a presentation for 30 minutes and then Q&A for 30 minutes. And you'll get a lot of valuable information. And the good thing about having it there is it's there whenever you need it.
Right.
Because right now, what I'm saying kind of goes over your head because it doesn't matter. But when it matters, you can.
It matters.
When you want to pick an attorney, you have some personalities to go choose from. You can get a start at least. So we did that. And the next couple of things that we've done is now we have credit cards. For the first time ever, the Morris County Surrogate's office accepts credit cards, which allows you then to pay using the online platform, which expedites the process just a little bit more. There is a convenience fee, $3 for that. And now we have online appointments. So essentially you can transact with our office 24 hours a day right now.
Right.
So the two main things that I'm very proud of with this online probate platform, it exists, but it's a framework and it needs to get skin on those bones, some meat and some skin. So we went to Senator Bucco and we asked him if you recall, during COVID, people were allowed to do DocuSign. They were allowed to do remote signing of documents. So now you send us the information if you want to use online probate, and we send the forms out, but you have to send them back with ink on them, whether you hand deliver them or mail them with ink. With DocuSign, it's almost simultaneous. As soon as you get them, you DocuSign them after you review them, make sure everything's right, you get them back to us. So Senator Bucco has legislation filed S828 to accomplish that, and we're hoping that goes through. There seems to be a lot of positive feedback and positive response behind it. And then the next thing is to have virtual wills, which exist in 6 states, but not in the state of New Jersey. The bar wants them. The judiciary is going to have to figure them out if the legislature doesn't allow the surrogate's offices to do them. Right now, we follow procedure. We don't invent things. So that we have no procedure. And eventually, with 6 states having them in the transient nature of today's society, somebody's going to pass away, or somebody's going to move back to New Jersey to live with their child who's going to take care of them from one of the states that has it. They're going to pass away in New Jersey with a virtual will, and we're not going to be able to do anything with it. So we went to Senator Panaccio, who is dropping legislation. Actually, he either did last week or is about to this week. I'm not really sure where we are on that one, but there's a lot of support behind it from surrogates, and the bar is largely behind it. So what that would do if we have virtual wills is, instead of uploading the paper to our system, you have this virtual will that you submit. And as long as the indicia of credibility are there that's required by the statute, we will have everything that we need to go through probate. And the surrogates are able to get death certificates. So you would not necessarily need to give us an original death certificate, because if you gave us a copy, that's something we could always check out on our own. So what that means is, if a parent passes away in Morris County and they have a child that lives in Dubai, lives and works in Dubai, that person, that child in Dubai, that's the executor or executrix, can probate that parent's estate in the Morris County Surrogate's office in a matter of about 2 hours, as opposed to 2 months, the way things exist now. So that's the big picture of what we've been doing. I can get into the details there.
What you've done is you've modernized something that really, until you need it, the presumption was probably, oh, all that is there, that's how they do it, but it wasn't how it was being done. And when you need it, these things need to be done in a timely way, right? And asking for all these documents and finding originals and this is amazing. And I don't know that people appreciate it as much as they should, but certainly the moment that they need it, they will appreciate the fact that you've modernized it, made it available, but also the wealth of content to learn, is so much. I was joking about the free advice, but it's really not. Honestly, guidance and advice and, the booklets and sort of pointing in the right direction, it really is no excuse for not having your affairs in order.
No, there's none. And in fairness, the amount of time that it would take, I had the benefit of practicing for 15 years in wills, trusts, and estates before I became the surrogate. Had I not had the benefit of that, it would have taken me, I probably would have had to serve 3 terms before I figured out what I figured out in the first couple of months, because really I knew about the things that we talked about today, as far as the wills and the planning and that stuff.
Right.
I did not know the inner workings of the surrogates court on the day-to-day operations. And thank God I have an incredible staff that's been there for many, many years, who, excuse my phone, please, who's been there for many, many years, who have always been able to keep things running no matter who the surrogate was, because some of them were there for 25 years with the prior surrogate and with surrogate before the prior surrogate. They're historians of the office. And my deputy, thank God, my deputy is one who's been there since almost the beginning of the prior surrogate's term. Huge win for me, because that guy knows how to do anything and everything. Chris Luongo is a huge asset, and I had to talk him into staying. He was thinking about retiring. It was the smartest thing I ever did.
Sure. So, absolutely.
Hats off. There's not a lot of people there, but the people that are there are all dedicated and incredible at what they do. And they really do work hard to help people, like not just to get it done, but to actually listen and talk people through it. Even the people that I have that have been there for 2 years, they understand that nobody comes in there during the greatest time in their life unless it's an adoption. And that's, like I said, that's one person.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with a guardianship, there's a situation.
If
you're dealing with probate, there's a situation.
Yeah.
So compassion is key. And my people have that, and the dedication to come in every day during COVID when the bulk of the county was closed. People in my office that never had a parking space in the garage before all had spots because nobody else was there. Nobody was there. It was fantastic. The clerk's office was there. The prosecutors weren't there. The sheriff's officers were there. We were there. And the clerk's office were there. The constitutionals were there.
The constitutionals were there.
We were there. And everything else was essentially on Zoom. So,
well, kudos to you guys for doing that and for being there when, people are sometimes in their darkest hours. And again, it's easy to sail through life not knowing that exists, not knowing that you need it until you need it. All of this information that you've posted, I'm going to ask you just one more question about your own political views with the state. But before we do that, what is the website? How do we direct people to the right place so they can make, the best of all this content?
MorrisSurrogate.com. It's very simple. MorrisSurrogate.com. You don't even need county. We didn't want it longer.
That's great. That's one of the more simple government websites I've ever heard, frankly.
Well, there's a longer way to get there, but
of course there is. Yes. Of course there is. So I want to thank you for all of that. But you aren't just Morris County Surrogate. You're also a force in yourself in terms of your views of how to help the people of New Jersey. As you're seeing everything in this state, you post a lot on social media, what's going on in this country. We don't have a lot of time left. We've already gone over time because I wanted people to have this information. But what are your biggest concerns? What keeps you up at night?
I deal with a lot of seniors, and this is Heather Darling. This is not Surrogate Darling, okay?
Right.
But I deal with a lot of seniors, and what I do. These are people on a fixed income, okay? And now we're looking at this time of the year, $5 a gallon gas, $6 a gallon diesel, and you see the gas goes up a little, down a little because right now people can curtail their activities, and they have been. But when it comes winter and everybody needs that heating fuel, I'm terrified that people are going to have to choose between heat and food. And I see that as a really strong likelihood if something does not change. And, we've got midterms coming up. I don't know that that's soon enough, because the new administration still won't take over. Even if you win the midterms, you don't take over until next year. So that means people have to get through October, November, December, and you can't reverse it immediately. You could turn the pipeline back on, but good luck. It's been closed for how long? The rates have been unfavorable to the oil companies to do exploration and drilling for how long? These supply chain issues. I think the other day I was in a store. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I was in a store and I heard an employee talking to somebody else, and said, if you thought it was bad with the toilet paper, wait until you see what's coming. And if you notice, the shelves are more and more bare. I think it was Kansas, I want to say last week, there was a heat wave. Thousands of cattle died mysteriously. Doesn't really happen like that very often. All of a sudden it just did. We're seeing more and more food plants shut down. I think we're seeing a lot of devastation that's coming, and it's something that I'm concerned about our economy. I'm concerned about the number of people that are coming in from the southern border that we've promised to support that are unable to work because they're not citizens. There's no path to citizenship. So because there's no path to citizenship, you're invited here and you cannot work. What does that mean? That means that somebody has to support you. And that's us, one way or the other, because these people are not going to let their families starve, and rightfully so, right? But if the government doesn't continue to give them things, they're going to come knocking on our doors. And eventually when they get to the fifth door and their kid's starving, they're going to push the door in and they're going to come and take what they need to feed their kid, just like any other human being would do. Right. And it's really terrifying. People I think have been backed into a position at this point financially. COVID started it all with the trillions of dollars that went out the door to keep people home instead of keep people out, keep the economy running. We put everything to a grinding halt. Over the years, we've been sending manufacturing out of the country, so now we don't have it at home. We're trying to build it back up, but how fast can you build it when when the costs are going up so high here and everything is cheaper in other countries? How fast can you get people to build here? You see these kids that used to move to another state to start their lives. Now they're actually moving to other countries to start their lives.
And that is true. That's shocking. I mean, America is sort of the last vestige of freedom. The fact that you would go somewhere else, it says more than we can even say. And obviously we have a lot of work to do. We all need to do what we can do. You are right now in an elected position where you're doing what you can do to ease suffering and to help people through the things that, they're facing. But I think you're right. I think we're headed for some things that are going to be tough. So I want to thank you for having a voice, for, speaking out loudly about these things that matter. I want to thank you for what you've done in the surrogate's office. This has been incredibly educational. And I know you have continuing to have a future to help us here in New Jersey. And what that is, we shall see. But we appreciate everything you do. You're an incredible public servant, Heather. And really somebody who has made a difference in Morris County and really for the whole state, frankly, because you were a leader as a surrogate. So I say thank you. And we loved having you on. And everyone, again, give that website one more time.
It's morrissurrogate.com. And Elizabeth, I want to take a second to thank you. I know we went over time already, but I appreciate your giving me this opportunity because it's true what you said. So many people don't know what we do in our office, and we want to be there as a known resource for people because it is something very important. And we do have resources available in the office. We have those 3 books. You can get them online. You can watch the videos. There will be more coming. We had to take a hiatus as our office got reconstructed by Buildings and Grounds, but now we're back in there, and we're looking forward to delivering more good information for the people of Morris.
That's awesome. There's no reason not to be well informed. So hopefully this will help. We'll keep sharing this video. It'll actually be content that can last out there for quite some time. So hopefully we'll help some people figure out what you do and what they need to do. Heather, thank you so much. We'll have you back in the future. All right, great. All right. And to my audience, guys, check out that website. Have a great